Hello and welcome to another practical. Today we will look at Nergal against Retribution. If I remember correctly, this was one of the first times I undocked Nergal, and I made a couple of instructive mistakes. So let's talk about the matchup first. Overall, Nergal is an obvious favorite. Retribution realistically cannot break Nergal's tank in 1v1. But on the other hand, Retribution is a bit faster and it has a bit better control overall. So agility is better and speed is better. And in addition, this is Micro Drive Kite against Micro Drive Kite. So this is the messiest and probably most difficult matchup to control in faction warfare. So as Retribution pilot, you generally will get some opportunities to escape once you realize that you're not winning this. So for Retribution pilot, it makes sense to take this fighting position since there are many really bad Nergal fits around, and it's worth checking if it's actually a decent fit or not, since you are gonna get plenty of opportunities to escape most likely anyways. So far everything makes sense to me. Now what you want to do in these matchups ideally is to get behind your opponent and then align your movement vector with a movement vector of your opponent. So this is what I'm trying to do. Once you achieve this position, the range actually becomes relatively static, even though you both move at a very high speed, because your movement vectors will cancel each other out. So you will see it now. You can see that we are moving quite fast, but once I'm in a proper position, like here, so I'm behind my opponent and I align my movement vector with the movement vector of my opponent, you see that the situation actually gets quite static. Yeah, we are not really moving anywhere. Well, we are moving somewhere, but relative to each other, we are not really moving anywhere. And after that, you try to control this situation and just get a win on time to DPS. So what's going on so far? He is killing my drones, which is fine for me because these are not really anti-kiting drones. Hornets are not gonna deal that much damage to a kiting distribution, so I'm perfectly fine with losing all of my drones and just pulling my main gun. Even, well, regardless of whether I have my drones or not, this fight is gonna be decided on positioning anyways. It's not gonna be decided by drones. So I'm okay with losing my drones. Now here I actually kind of want to not have links, because without links I would have been a bit slower and it would be easier to control this distance. Now, because I'm so fast with skirmish links, I overtake the Retribution and it becomes a bit more difficult to control this range. I think the correct micro here would be to manually reduce my speed to somewhere around 2.6 and then just chill behind him and wait what is he going to do. But this micro is quite rare, so it does not really come to muscle memory immediately. But anyway, this is not the end of the world. So now you can see that I essentially overtook him. And what you do in this situation, you just make sure that your movement vectors are still parallel. so that even though you're kind of moving ahead, you're not moving ahead at a rapid pace. This is more difficult to manage because once he decides to turn, you need to be on top of it and also turn as quickly as possible. So when you are behind him, you have just more time to react when in this situation. So my position got a bit worse, but it's still okay. And now I make my first mistake. So I got lost in 3D. I thought that our movement vectors are actually parallel, and they kind of look parallel. So you can see this, and you can see this. But in reality, they are not quite parallel. They are diverging in different locations, different directions. So his movement vector is a bit more towards the sun, and my movement vector is a bit away from the sun. And this is just not well visible on this camera. So this is why I thought they are kind of parallel. But you can see from the distance that we are actually going away from each other quite quickly. And I did not realize that for a while. To be honest, already 2 or 3 seconds before that, I should have corrected my direction. But I only realized it, I think here, yes. So here I corrected my movement vector. Now I'm trying to catch up essentially. I don't really care about parallel anymore because I'm just too far behind, 22 kilometers away. I need to catch up. And here this fight continues honestly only because of my links. Because without links, I would have never be able to catch up to him. He's hitting, as you can see, 4.1. And I'm just very slow for everything. So I'm not hitting my point, and if I did not have links, this fight would be over already. He would have just walked out somewhere. But because I have links, I actually catch up even with a pretty bad micro. Now, here he already realizes that he is not gonna break my tank, and he actively tries to escape. So now, when I catch up to him, yeah, you can see he starts turning. So this is again pretty reasonable from Retribution. What you do in these situations, you wait until your opponent kind of catches up to you, and then you turn. Turn while being aligned somewhere. And your opponent will need to react and double click as well. You cannot sit on auto orbit, it's just not gonna work. In general, auto orbits or approaches in kite against kite they don't work at all. You need to manually pilot, as you can see in this fight. But here I'm already kind of on top of it, because now I realize what's going on. And this is another useful trick. So you look at your opponent's ship, and when you just double click in front of your opponent's ship, and it ensures that your movement vectors will be aligned and you will burn directly behind your opponent. And you don't need to pilot your ship, you just kind of pilot your opponent's ship. So when he turns, you just turn as well. You just correct your movement vector. And this way, you always stay behind your opponent. But here I make another mistake. And this one, it is crucial, because now I don't have links, so I can't be lazy anymore. So you can see that he is hitting his micro warp drive again. I think I kind of assumed that he is out of his hitting pool, since he hit the micro warp drive a couple of times before. So I thought that he cannot hit anymore. And this is why I wasn't really on top of it. But you can see that he is hitting micro drive again. So it's 3.5. Normally Retribution goes about 3.0. And in this situation, you must react to it immediately. So I still have about like 2 or 3 seconds on my macro overdrive cycle, and I should have preheated it immediately. It's so important because in macro overdrive kite against macro overdrive kite, if you do not react to it in time, you have to wait for the entire 10 seconds while your macro overdrive is on the next cycle before you can hit it. And 10 seconds is an eternity in these fights. You will see actually. So the next cycle I should have preheated it right now, and I don't. And I still don't. And here I realize what's going on. I see what he is hitting and what he is pulling away, and I preheat my macro overdrive. You will see it flashing. But the problem is I have to wait. I have to wait, and meanwhile Retribution is 20 kilometers away. And I still wait, and only now I get boost, but Retribution is already 24 kilometers away. And I miss my hitting cycle on the Warp Disruptor, so he gets a tick of opportunity to escape, but he does not use it. So I immediately preheat and activate it. But the problem is he is still too fast. Even though I'm hitting, now I'm without links, and without links, macro overdrive Nergal is slower than macro overdrive Retribution. So I just cannot catch up anymore. And my point drops and Retribution warps out, which is quite unfortunate. Okay, so I think it's a pretty instructive fight. There are a couple of things that I could have done better, and I think you can get some useful tricks from it as well for your own PvP. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next practical.